The hotel lobby fell completely silent when the security guard blocked the single father from entering the room he had paid for. His little daughter stood beside him, clutching a faded pink backpack, while the front desk manager looked him up and down with open disgust. He was wearing a plain work shirt, dusty boots, and trousers marked by a long morning of hard labor. The manager leaned closer and quietly told him that people like him were not welcome in the hotel's luxury rooms. What the staff did not know was that the man standing in front of them was not a stranger, not a trespasser, and certainly not someone who had come begging for a free stay. He was the owner of the hotel. And within the next 10 minutes, one employee would lose her job, an entire hotel staff would face a painful lesson, and one little girl's simple question would expose a truth that nobody in that lobby was prepared to hear. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and never judging someone by the clothes they wear, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this message, and subscribe to Echo Tale Story. Your support helps us bring more emotional stories like this one to you. The man's name was Everett Calloway, a 42-year-old father who had spent most of his life believing that success was measured not by the size of a bank account, but by the number of people you could help when they needed you. He had grown up in a small apartment with a mother who worked 2 jobs and a father who disappeared before Everett was old enough to understand why. He learned early that life could be unfair, but he also learned that dignity did not come from expensive clothes or polished shoes. It came from how you treated people when nobody was watching. Years later, Everett built a successful hospitality company from almost nothing, eventually purchasing the old Marlowe Grand Hotel, a beautiful 5-star property in the heart of the city. The hotel had marble floors, tall glass windows, elegant chandeliers, and rooms that overlooked a peaceful river. To most people, it was a symbol of luxury. To Everett, it was something more important. It was a promise. He wanted every guest who entered those doors to feel respected, regardless of their background. But Everett had been away from the hotel for several months because his life had changed in a way that no business success could have prepared him for. His wife, Serafina, had passed away after a sudden illness, leaving Everett to raise their 8-year-old daughter, Juniper, alone. Grief had changed everything. The man who once wore tailored suits and attended meetings in expensive offices now spent his mornings packing school lunches, fixing broken toys, and working late into the night after putting his daughter to bed. Juniper had become his entire world, and Everett had become determined to give her the one thing money could never buy, a childhood filled with love. One bright weekday morning, Everett decided to take Juniper on a short trip to the Marlowe Grand. He wanted to spend a quiet day with her before she returned to school after a long break. He had planned a surprise afternoon by the hotel pool, a special lunch, and a walk along the river. But before leaving home, Everett had spent several hours repairing a leaking pipe at one of his smaller properties. He had promised the tenants he would personally fix it, and by the time he finished, his clothes were dusty and his hands were covered with grease. Juniper begged him not to change because she loved seeing her father work with his hands. So Everett laughed, washed his face, grabbed her backpack, and drove them to the Marlowe Grand. He could have called ahead and announced who he was. He could have walked through the lobby surrounded by assistants. But Everett deliberately chose not to. He wanted to see how his employees treated ordinary people when they believed nobody important was watching. It was something he had done before, quietly visiting his businesses without warning. But this time, he never imagined the test would become so personal. As Everett and Juniper walked through the hotel's grand entrance, the bright afternoon sunlight followed them across the marble floor. Juniper's eyes widened when she saw the enormous chandelier hanging above the lobby. She whispered excitedly about the beautiful flowers and the glass elevator. Everett smiled and squeezed her hand. They approached the front desk, where a woman named Maribel Voss was standing with a tablet in her hand. Maribel was the hotel's front desk manager, known among senior executives for being efficient, confident, and extremely ambitious. She looked at Everett once, then immediately looked away. When he explained that he had a reservation under his name, her expression changed. Everett gave his name, but Maribel did not recognize it. She searched the computer, frowned, and asked for identification. Everett calmly handed it over. Maribel stared at the screen for several seconds before looking back at him. Then she asked him if he was sure he had booked the room himself. Everett said yes. She told him there appeared to be a problem. The room was listed as reserved for the hotel's ownership account, and she could not release it without authorization. Everett explained that he was the owner and that the reservation had been made under his personal name. Instead of calling the general manager, Maribel sighed impatiently. She looked at his worn work shirt, his dusty boots, and his daughter's inexpensive backpack. Then she glanced toward a wealthy couple waiting nearby, dressed in designer clothing. Her entire attitude seemed to change. Everett noticed it immediately, but he remained calm. He asked her to verify the information with the general manager. Maribel told him that the general manager was busy and that she could not interrupt him for every person who claimed to have a reservation. Everett gently reminded her that he had not claimed anything. He had simply asked her to check. That was when Maribel made the mistake that would change her life. She leaned forward and told Everett that the hotel had standards. She said guests staying in certain rooms were expected to meet a particular level of presentation. She suggested that perhaps he had confused the Marlowe Grand with another property. Everett stared at her, unable to believe what he was hearing. Juniper looked up at him, confused. She did not understand why the woman behind the desk was speaking to her father as if he had done something wrong. Everett asked one final time for her to contact the general manager. Maribel refused. When Everett asked for the reservation to be cancelled, she told him that because of the inconvenience, the hotel would not be able to accommodate him at all. Then, in front of Juniper, she called security. The security guard approached slowly, looking embarrassed. Everett recognized him immediately. His name was Darius Wren, and Everett had personally approved his hiring the year before. Darius looked at Everett, then at Maribel, and seemed unsure what to do. Maribel instructed him to escort the man and his daughter outside because they were disturbing the lobby. Everett's heart sank. He wasn't angry because he had been denied a room. He was hurt because his daughter was watching. Juniper's small hand tightened around his fingers. She looked up at him and quietly asked why they were being treated like they had done something bad. Everett crouched down beside her and told her that sometimes people made decisions before they knew the truth. He told her that being kind was still important, even when someone else was not kind to you. But before Everett could stand up, Darius suddenly noticed the identification card still lying on the front desk. His face changed. He looked at the name again. Then he looked at the photograph. His eyes widened. He asked Maribel if she knew who she was speaking to. Maribel snapped that she did not have time for nonsense. Darius quietly told her that the man standing in front of her was Everett Calloway, the owner. The room seemed to freeze. Maribel stared at Everett. Her face turned pale. She immediately began apologizing, saying she had not realized who he was. Everett looked at her and asked the question that nobody expected. He asked whether she would have treated him differently if he had arrived wearing a $1,000 suit. Maribel had no answer. Everett then turned to Darius and asked him to call the general manager. Within minutes, the hotel's senior staff rushed into the lobby. The general manager, Alistair Crane, nearly ran down the staircase when he realized what had happened. He apologized repeatedly, but Everett stopped him. He did not want excuses. He wanted answers. Everett asked Maribel why she had denied his reservation. She said there had been confusion. Everett asked why she had judged his appearance. She said she had been trying to protect the hotel's image. Everett asked why she had called security instead of simply verifying his identity. Again, she had no answer. Then Everett noticed Juniper standing quietly near the entrance. Her eyes were filled with tears. He walked over to her and knelt down. He told her that the hotel belonged to him, but that did not make what happened acceptable. He explained that money could buy a room, but it could never buy respect. Respect had to be given freely. Juniper wiped her eyes and looked at the adults gathered around them. Then she asked something that broke Everett's heart. She asked if the hotel was supposed to be a place where people felt safe. Everett nodded. She asked why a person could be made to feel small just because they did not look rich. Nobody spoke. The little girl had said what every adult in the room was too embarrassed to admit. Everett stood slowly. He looked around the lobby, at the employees who had witnessed everything, and finally at Maribel. He told her that she was fired effective immediately. Maribel began crying. She pleaded for another chance, explaining that she had worked hard and that she had made a terrible mistake. Everett listened quietly. He could have humiliated her. He could have ordered her removed in front of everyone. Instead, he told her that he believed people deserved second chances, but second chances required accountability. He told her that the hotel could forgive mistakes, but it could not tolerate cruelty disguised as professionalism. Maribel apologized to Juniper. The little girl looked at her father. Everett nodded. Juniper accepted the apology. That moment surprised everyone. Everett then made an announcement to the entire hotel staff. He said that starting that day, every employee would receive new training focused not only on customer service, but on human dignity. He said that no guest would ever again be judged by clothing, accent, occupation, or appearance. He also announced a new policy that would provide free emergency rooms to families facing unexpected hardship, because he remembered what it felt like to have very little and still hope that someone would treat you with kindness. The story could have ended there, with a powerful lesson and a new policy. But Everett wasn't finished. He called Darius forward. He thanked him for having the courage to question what was happening. Then he promoted him to guest relations supervisor. Darius was stunned. Everett told him that a hotel needed people who could recognize the humanity of a guest before recognizing the value of their wallet. The following weeks changed the Marlowe Grand. The staff became more attentive. Guests began noticing the difference. The hotel created a small community fund for families who needed temporary accommodation after emergencies. Everett even invited Maribel to apply for a training position at one of his smaller properties after she completed a customer care program. He did not give her the job automatically. He gave her the opportunity to earn it. Months later, Everett returned to the Marlowe Grand with Juniper. This time, he wore a simple blue shirt and comfortable shoes. As they entered the lobby, Juniper looked around nervously. A young receptionist smiled warmly and welcomed them. She did not care about his clothes. She did not ask how much money he had. She simply smiled. Everett smiled back. Then Juniper whispered that the hotel finally felt like the place her father had always wanted it to be. Everett looked at his daughter and realized that perhaps the greatest thing he had built was not a hotel, a company, or a fortune. It was a lesson. A lesson that would live longer than any building. Because sometimes the people we judge most quickly are the ones carrying the heaviest burdens. Sometimes the person wearing old clothes has spent years working to keep a family alive. Sometimes the quiet stranger in the corner has a story we will never know. And sometimes, the smallest voice in the room is the one brave enough to remind us what truly matters. Everett never forgot that afternoon. Neither did Juniper. And neither did the people who witnessed it. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes kindness still matters, and subscribe to Echo Tale Story for more emotional stories that remind us of the goodness still left in the world. And before the story ends, I want to ask you something special. Comment the word kindness below if you believe everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, no matter what they wear, where they come from, or how much money they have. Because the truth is, we never really know what someone is carrying behind their smile. We never know how hard someone worked to make it through the day. And we never know when one small act of kindness might become the reason someone believes in humanity again. So the next time you meet someone who looks different from you, speaks differently from you, or seems to have less than you, remember Everett's lesson. Don't judge the clothes. Don't measure the worth. Don't assume you know the story. Because sometimes, the person standing quietly in front of you is not asking for special treatment. They are only asking to be treated like a human being. And perhaps that is something every one of us can afford to give.